a little bit more, or are they the ones that felt really easy, that I just really enjoyed? Is it a particular movement you remember, or a series of movements? It's been a long 3 weeks of a lot of different ATMs, but the themes have often been recurring. Gradually including more of yourself in your image. Knowing myself in different, unusual orientations and positions. Always engaged in how do I learn? How do I go about the process of getting in the way of my learning? Just as much as I get in the way, or not get in the way, but I really help my learning. I really have found ways that are useful for me, that I can apply to any ATMs I do. So before we do this last ATM, if you were going to think of a movement that you really enjoyed doing, and again, often when we enjoy something, we automatically have more of ourselves involved in the movement. Usually we're using the ground better, our head is freer, our pelvis is free to move us. We have this connection all the way through us. So could you select a movement and just do a couple? From these 3 weeks, any movement you like. And just as you're doing it, how much of you do you involve in your image? Is my pelvis connected through my torso to my head? How light are my arms and legs, my head? How can I feel this ability to find where I can shift my weight easily and how I can redistribute my weight from one bit to the next to the next? It's a little bit like one of the analogies I use is how they've got all these beautiful things in Western Australia, I'm sure they do here, where they're trying to get bits of land that are planted with particular plants to allow the birds to move more easily through particular areas. How does your inclusive attention feel? The softness of your intention. And simply, this is more for my interest, If you were going to do a little bit of bell hand now, whatever position you're in, so not so much the flexing and extension, but the bell hand, that sort of soft, bringing the thumb, your fingers along. How far do you feel that through yourself now? How much of you do you feel responding to that movement of bell hand? How does that wind through your arm to your upper chest, to your collarbones, to your neck, your head, your sternum, your ribs, your pelvis, your belly, your back, your legs? And then using that sense of bell hand, this flexion, extension, the drawing together of us and the opening out, could you bring yourself to your hands and knees? Using this pulsing action, how would you bring yourself to your hands and knees? So I can see a lot of you using it as a feedback device. It's gorgeous, spreading your attention. And once you've found your hands and knees, and notice your arrangement today, where your knees are, your hands are. Is it different to the other day? Is your breathing easy? And very gently just begin to look up a little bit toward the ceiling and down a little bit toward the floor. And how do you do that? How much is in your image? How do you shift your weight? Do you need to shift it a long way to do that over your feet and your knees and your hands? Or you can find a more subtle shift, a smaller shift. So just feel that a little. What happens if, to look up and down, you do a big movement of transferring your weight over your knees and your hands? So you do much more a forward, backward movement. Still keeping in quality, but there's a really big shift of weight. And feel how much of your torso is involved. And then come back to making it a much smaller shift in weight. How does that change what you do in your torso? Again, this is what we've been playing with. When do we need to do a big shift in weight to allow things, the possibility of becoming alive? And then how do we transfer it back to a smaller shift in weight? Okay, place the top of your head on the floor, like we did the other day. Is it a little clearer where the top of your head is? And hands in push-up if you can. If that's not comfortable, don't feel you need to be there. And go through some of those variations we did the other day. So we were rolling a little bit forward and back on the top of your head. And then we were changing. So we started off with both the arms and the legs being symmetrical. And then we sort of changed the symmetry of the arms and left the legs where they were. Just a couple of, with each. Changed the symmetry of the legs and left the arms symmetrical. Just feeling, how's this going through you today? And then bringing the elbow and knee on one side, the hand and knee on one side closer together or further away. How does this get through to your head? And then the opposite elbow and knee closer together. Sorry, the elbow and hand closer together and the other one further away. How are all of these changing the shape through your torso as you roll forward and your belly gets shorter in lots of different configurations. And then as you roll back a little bit and your belly gets longer in lots of different configurations. And your sternum might move differently and your ribs. And then could you take a pause whenever you like, but just a few reps of each. Could you bring your right knee and your right knee and your left hand a little closer and take your left knee and your right hand a little bit further away? And see, how do you find the middle now? How do you adapt to all these changes in where your weight is? And then your right hand and your left knee closer to the other diagonal closer. So finding all these different ways to change your shape in the middle. And have a rest. Any position you like. So again, the lessons we were doing this morning, or a lot of the lessons that we've been doing about shifting your weight, letting your head move through space, which is quite different to this one and a lot of the judo rolls that we did, where you were keeping your head fixed in space and finding how you had to organise around your head being on the ground. So everything else had to organise around your head. So come back to your hands and knees. Top of your head on the floor again. And this time, could you begin with the top of your head on the floor? Really think of the centre point of it on the floor. Could you begin to rotate your head a little bit around that axis. Just really gently. So you're turning your nose to the right as the back of your head goes to the left. And then you're turning your nose to the left as the back of your head goes to the right. So you're really staying over the top of your head. It's a tiny little rotate. So you're really staying on this central point and pivoting around it. How clear is that for you? And you can let as much of the rest of you help out here. Great. So now, leave that for a moment. Leave your head on the ground. And this time, could you begin to the top of your head? You're going to roll a little to the left and to the right. So this is going to be a side bending of your head now. So you're not turning your nose. It's like you've got a line, you've got the center point of your head, so you're not turning. This is one ear coming a little bit closer to the ground and then the other ear coming a little bit closer to the ground. Is this movement getting any clearer for some of you? So it's not a slide of your head, Sue. Top of your head's on the floor, and you're taking it a little left and right. Yeah. So before we were doing up and down, which was a vertical line on the floor, this is a horizontal line. But you're right on the top of your head. You're not on your forehead. So it's just a small movement. How do I take my head a little left and a little right? So it's a tiny movement. And begin to explore this movement now with those different configurations of your arms and your legs. Just a couple with each. You don't have, this is not about doing a lot of repetitions. You've spread your attention a lot. This is just, how does this different configuration of my arms and legs influence this ability of my top of my head to know where's right and where's left? Where's right and where's left? No? So you're not sliding, yeah? It's just a tiny movement, maybe a centimetre each way. Again, where do you want your hands to be? And you're really just noticing, does this influence the trajectory of this knowing exactly where left and right is with the top of my head by moving my knees and hands? Or can I still keep this absolute clarity that I know where left is and I know where right is? And it's on the top of your head. Just a couple with each one, and have a rest again. And just feel when you rest, doesn't matter what position you're in, what's different? How do I know where my head is in space relative to gravity, which is relative to these planes of movement, this vertical and horizontal lines, where I'm orienting to my environment to find this line. Everything's organising around this orientation to my environment. So it's a little like the pelvic clock in a way, where we're orienting to the environment outside. We're orienting to the 12, the 6, the 3, the 9. Come back to your hands and knees. And how do you bring this image of the top of your head, or where your head is, can you bring that with you as you come onto your hands and knees? Does that change how you come up onto your hands and knees? And then just try that turning again that we did before we did left and right, where the top of your head is on the floor and you're doing that little turn. So the center point is staying where it is, and your nose is turning one way and the back of your head is turning the other. And how might this be influenced by some of those different configurations? Just taking it gently. These slight changes in position. Do I still know where the top of my head is? And do I still know what turning the top of my head means? Are my eyes soft? Can I still feel my shoulders are mobile, my hips are mobile, my belly's soft, my breathing's easy? And I know where my head is in space. Just have a sit for a minute. Wherever you are, that's fine. Just have a sit. Bring yourself up into gravity a little bit and just say, what's that done? And just see, if you think of the top of your head now, wherever you are, and think of it just moving a little bit forward and back, which is yes. Can you really think of the top of your head being the initiator? You can put your finger on the top of your head if you like. And then you could think of the top of your head going a little left or right. So it's not turning, it's side bending left and right. And is it the top of your head that's initiating that movement, or somewhere else? So Feldenkrais does some beautiful lessons about a pencil out at the top of your head. And then what about pivoting around that point, the turning? So if your finger's on the top of your head, you feel your head's not moving through space, it's just pivoting. So as your nose goes to the right, the back of your head goes to the left. Gently, softly. Okay. So now could you go down onto your hands and knees again? Now you're getting a little bit more clarity about where the top of your head is. And this time, find a way, and again, do whatever you need to get this comfortable where your hands don't need to take weight. That you can have your head somewhere, that have we learnt something through all these movements where your head could begin to weight bear but not be pushed into the ground. And so your hands could be underneath you somewhere or touching your knees, and if you still need a little bit of weight on the ground with your arms, it's fine. And just roll your head a little bit forward and back now. Just a little. Just to clarify, where's the top of my head? And maybe roll it a little left and right. Just a tiny bit, this now horizontal line. And then could you pivot it a little bit? And again, we're just trying to clarify where the top of your head is. And then once you've found that top of your head, but you feel you've got wiggle room there, you can still move it a little bit. So it's not stuck on the floor. It's got a little bit of movement forward and back, left and right and around. Could you put your toes into a push-up position? And could you begin to lift one knee? Not your toes, just your knee. Doesn't matter which. And how do you find, no, you're not lifting your leg. You're staying on your toes. You've got, if you need the weight on your hands, keep it there. And you're lifting your knee. And feeling, could that lifting the knee roll me a little bit forward and back? Just a fraction. And where does my pelvis need to go in the air if my head goes a little bit forward and back to lift my knee? Then you could try the other side. Feel how your foot can drive up through, so you don't have to shift your weight a long way. You've still got weight on the foot that you're lifting the knee of, so that your head keeps going forward and then comes back a little bit. So how do you free your knee? That's great. Have a rest on your back. So how do we get our head used to being weight-bearing? Because we did a lot in the judo rolls on getting the side of the face to be able to shift weight in lots of different ways. So again, we're making the point smaller. How do you adapt to finding a smaller base of support? Feel the length of you at the moment from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet. Roll your head a little. Just a little. Keeping the image of the top of your head. Where's it going? Can you keep that image? And then one last time, come onto your hands and knees. And just see if anything's changed about where you're putting your hands and knees with your head on the floor at the moment. Has anything recalibrated? Or do you automatically go into just putting them in the same place, or is there a difference? And do a little roll forward and back over the top of your head again. And just see if there's anything different. Where do your shoulders go, your chest, your belly? Then you could do a little side to side. And then a little pivot. Turning around it. And from there, come up to standing. How do you come up to standing after finding out where your head is in space? Where the top of your head is in space. Fascinating, isn't it? So this is a lesson that we've been doing, that we're really organising around the top of your head. What does this do to your attention? Can you feel this isn't as much about when we got up after all the rolling lessons? When would you use this? When could this sense of yourself be interesting if you were doing FI? FI. This might be something you might want to cultivate, let alone your ordinary life, but, you know, how would you walk now? And we've been clarifying how everything can move a little bit underneath your head. So my debate with myself this morning was, do I finish with this lesson or the one this morning? And I thought we'd finish with this one. A little bit more oriented, a little bit more awake, maybe. A little bit more ready to go out and move in the world. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Margaret. Thank you, Jen. And really, keep enjoying the journey. It's a great one. Have a good time. Thank you. I'm learning how to tolerate this. That's enough. Thank you. I'm getting better, but thank you.